I'm standing in the lobby of my family's hotel when I see her. 6 years. 6 years of trying to forget that face. And she walks through the doors like she never left. Vivian. My Vivian. Except she's not mine anymore. I made sure of that when I signed those papers. She hasn't noticed me yet. She's holding the hand of a little girl, maybe 5 years old. Behind her, 2 boys follow close, same age, same careful way of walking. Triplets. The girl looks up, scanning the room, and when her eyes find mine, I stop breathing. Those are my eyes, my grandmother's eyes, that exact shade of winter grey that stared back at me from mirrors my entire life. My coffee cup slips from my hand. I don't hear it shatter on the marble. All I hear is blood rushing through my ears and impossible math clicking into place. She was pregnant. She was pregnant when I let my family push her out the door. She was carrying my children, and she never told me. Or maybe she tried to tell me. Maybe I wasn't listening. Maybe I was too much of a coward to answer her calls after the papers were signed. The little girl tugs on Vivian's sleeve and points directly at me. Vivian turns. Our eyes meet across that lobby, and I watch 6 years of pain flash across her face before it hardens into something I don't recognize. This woman rebuilt herself from nothing while I was busy destroying everything that mattered. Hey there, I'm Mr. Harlan, and you've just stepped into another episode of one of my favorite shows. If you're new here, welcome. You picked a powerful story to start with. And if you're returning, thank you for being part of this community. Today's guest is Daniel, and his story touches something we've all feared. The moment you realize you made the worst mistake of your life, and you might be too late to fix it. Hit that subscribe button if these stories move you the way they move me. Daniel, take us back. How did you and Vivian first meet? Thanks, Mr. Harlan. It started almost 7 years ago now. I was celebrating some deal at an upscale restaurant downtown, an acquisition that felt important at the time. Couldn't tell you what company it was if you paid me. What I remember is her. Vivian was filling in that night, covering for someone who'd called in sick. She shouldn't have been serving our private room at all. But she walked in, set down my drink, and when I looked up, she met my eyes like I was just another person. Not a Devereux, not a name, not a wallet. Just a man sitting at a table. I asked for her number. She said no. I came back the next week. She said no again. I don't date customers, she finally told me. So, I stopped being one. I'd show up after her shift, waiting outside with coffee, not pressuring, not demanding, just hoping she'd give me a chance. Her co-workers thought she was crazy for resisting. She told me later what she'd been thinking. Men like me didn't end up with women like her. We entertained ourselves with women like her, then married someone appropriate. She was wrong about me. I fell in love with who she was. A woman working double shifts to put herself through business school. A woman with plans, real plans, that had nothing to do with my family's money or name. 6 months after our first coffee, I brought her home to meet my parents. That's when everything started to fall apart. The Devereux family home wasn't a house, it was an estate. Old portraits lined every hallway, generations of my ancestors looking down at whoever walked past. The money behind those walls was older than the city itself, and the traditions ran even deeper. My mother greeted Vivian that first evening with perfect politeness, the kind of polite that felt like being measured and found wanting. She smiled at appropriate moments, asked appropriate questions about Vivian's studies and her family background, and I watched something dim in Vivian's eyes as the night wore on. After she left, my mother found me in the study. She seems grounded, Eleanor said. Her tone made the words sound like a verdict. But darling, you know what's expected. I knew exactly what was expected. A wife from the right family. Children to continue the bloodline. The Devereux real estate empire needed heirs, and I was the only son. 4 generations of pressure settled on my shoulders every time I made a choice. I married Vivian anyway. The wedding was small, her choice. My family attended with practiced smiles, their reservations hidden behind silk and proper manners. Vivian's father walked her down the aisle in a rented suit, crying openly, not caring who saw. Her mother cupped Vivian's face afterward and whispered something that made my new wife's eyes fill with tears. "What did she say?" I asked that night. Vivian smiled, still in her wedding dress. "She told me to make sure you deserve me. Do the first. Ask me again in 50 years. For 2 years I did deserve her. We lived in a penthouse I owned, but Vivian transformed it into a home. She finished her degree while building contacts for the design business she dreamed of starting. I'd come home and find fabric samples covering every surface, draped over chairs, pinned to walls, spread across the dining table, alongside her notebooks full of sketches and client ideas. I loved the chaos of it. I loved watching her work, the way her forehead creased when she was solving a problem, the way she'd look up when I walked in with this distracted half smile like she'd forgotten I existed until that moment. Those were the best 2 years of my life. We talked about children, started trying. Every month felt like possibility, like maybe this time everything would come together. Every month the answer was the same: nothing. At first we told ourselves it was timing. Stress, her finishing school, me handling a major expansion at work. These things take time, we said. Normal couples try for a year before they worry. But a year passed, then another, and my mother's voice started appearing in places it didn't belong, at family dinners, in phone calls that ran too long, in questions wrapped in concern that cut deeper than anyone intended. "Have you considered seeing a specialist?" My mother asked at a family dinner, her voice light, her meaning anything but. Vivian had already seen 3. The diagnosis was unexplained infertility, not impossible, just unlikely. There were options, treatments, procedures that could take years with no guarantees. Years my family didn't feel they had. My father's health had started declining. Nothing immediately fatal, but enough to make succession feel urgent. The empire needed direction, and direction needed an heir. One night, after another failed month, I tried to offer solutions. "There are other ways," I said carefully. "Adoption, surrogacy. We don't have to do this the traditional way." Vivian's expression shifted to something fragile. "Your father would never accept that. You know how he is about bloodline." I did know. I'd grown up knowing. The Devereaux name wasn't just a name, it was a legacy, a weight I'd carried since the day I was born. "Then we keep trying," she said. "Or we accept that this might not happen. Either way, I'm your wife. That has to mean something." It meant everything to me. But it wasn't only my voice in my ear anymore. My mother started visiting when Vivian was out, casual drop-ins that always turned into conversations about family legacy. My father called with pointed questions about the situation. Family lawyers mentioned, almost in passing, that certain provisions in the estate required direct heirs. The message was clear. They would accept my choice of wife, but they would not accept failure to produce the next generation. The divorce had been quiet, but in circles like ours, nothing stayed secret for long. Whispers at galas, pitying looks from family friends. Everyone knew the Devereux heir had married beneath him, and now that marriage was proving fruitless. The conversation happened on a Tuesday. I'd been distant for weeks by then, working late, avoiding her eyes. Vivian knew something was wrong. I could see her watching me, waiting, giving me space to come to her. She still believed we could survive anything together. I let her believe that until I couldn't anymore. "My parents have made their position clear," I told her. My voice came out flat, rehearsed. I'd practiced this speech for days, trying to find words that didn't exist. "If we can't have children, the terms of my inheritance change. Everything changes. So we fight that. Together. It's not that simple." I couldn't meet her gaze. "It's not just money. The company, the properties, everything my family built for 4 generations. It all goes to a cousin I've never trusted. Unless I have a biological heir." The silence that followed felt like drowning. "You're asking me for a divorce." Her voice was steady. She wouldn't give me her tears. "So you can marry someone who can give you children." "I don't want to, Viv. You have to believe me. I've argued with them for months. But I can't be the one who loses everything. I can't be the son who ends it all. So you'll end us instead." I didn't have an answer. I didn't deserve one. The papers came 3 weeks later. I was generous, financially. I offered her money, property, anything that might ease my guilt. She took nothing except what she'd brought into the marriage. "I don't want anything from you," she said when she signed. Her handwriting was steady. Her eyes were dry. "I wanted you, Daniel. That's all I ever wanted." She walked out of that lawyer's office and never looked back. What neither of us knew, what I wouldn't discover for 6 more years, was that Vivian was already 2 weeks pregnant when she signed those papers. Too early for any test to detect. Too early for her body to signal what was growing inside. She found out a month later. She told me this eventually, when we finally had the conversations that mattered. She described sitting on the bathroom floor of her tiny new apartment, staring at a positive test, feeling the world tilt beneath her. Her first instinct was to call me. Her hand was on her phone before she stopped herself. I'd made my choice. Money, legacy, family pressure, whatever the reasons. I'd looked at our marriage and decided it wasn't worth the fight. If she came back pregnant, what would that make her? The woman who trapped me? A convenient solution to my heir problem? She refused to be that. If I couldn't love her enough to stay when things were hard, she wouldn't use a pregnancy to bring me back. She decided to do it alone. The pregnancy nearly broke her. Carrying triplets at 24 with no family money and no partner meant working freelance design jobs until her body wouldn't let her anymore. She'd take client calls between waves of nausea. She'd sketch layouts at 3 in the morning because that's when the babies finally settled enough for her to think straight. Her parents stepped in when it became clear she couldn't manage alone. Her mother moved into that tiny apartment for the last 2 months, sleeping on the couch, holding Vivian's hair during the worst mornings, reminding her that she came from people who didn't break. Theo, Sebastian, and Colette arrived 8 weeks early. Small but fighters. That's what the doctors told her. They spent their first month in the NICU, and Vivian spent every moment beside them, promising them a life where they would never doubt they were wanted. While she was doing that, I was sitting in board meetings, attending galas, letting my family parade appropriate women in front of me like I was shopping for furniture. I refused every one of them. My parents couldn't understand it. The divorce had served its purpose. I was free to find someone suitable, someone who could give them the heir they demanded. But I couldn't even consider another woman without seeing Vivian's face when she'd signed those papers. I told myself I was honoring what we'd had. The truth was simpler and uglier. I was frozen. Stuck in the moment of my worst decision, unable to move forward because some part of me knew I'd left the best thing in my life behind. Vivian didn't have the luxury of freezing. She had 3 mouths to feed and a future to build. The first year was pure survival. 3 newborns meant no sleep, and no sleep meant working at 2 in the morning while the babies finally rested. Freelance projects paid the bills. Barely. Her parents helped when they could, but they had their own struggles. The second year, she landed a real client. A boutique hotel owner had seen her work online, liked what he saw, and took a chance on a young designer with no major portfolio. The project was small, but Vivian poured everything into it. It got noticed. More work came. By year 3, she had an office. By year 4, employees. By year 5, her firm had designed the interiors for 2 of the most talked about restaurants in the city. Places where people like me paid too much for dinner, while people like her made the spaces worth visiting. By year 6, Vivian Moreau was a name. Self-made, respected, the kind of success story that got featured in magazines, the kind of woman who built an empire without inheriting one. Her children grew up watching their mother work. They learned that strength wasn't loud, it was showing up every single day, even when no one was watching. They asked about their father sometimes. She told me this later, her voice carefully neutral. She never lied to them, but she never gave them my name. "Your father and I loved each other very much," she'd tell them. "But sometimes love isn't enough. When you're older, I'll tell you everything." She always planned to. She just didn't know when or how. Then the call came, the one that changed everything. A law firm reached out to Vivian. Not just any firm, a Devereaux family firm. My father had passed away. The funeral was private, but apparently there were matters involving the estate that concerned her. She nearly hung up. She wanted nothing from my family, Nothing from the world she'd escaped. But then the lawyer said something that stopped her cold. The late Mr. Devereux included a provision in his will regarding any biological children of Daniel Devereux, regardless of the parents' marital status or the circumstances of birth. During our review of the estate, certain information came to our attention that suggests this provision may be relevant to you. They knew. Someone had discovered the triplets existed. Maybe a hospital record surfaced during the estate investigation. Maybe someone recognized them. They had my grandmother's distinctive features, the same bone structure that appeared in portraits throughout the estate. However it happened, my family's lawyers had found out. Vivian had two choices: hide and fight legal battles for years, or face it head-on. She chose to face it. She flew back to the city she'd fled 6 years earlier. The triplets stayed with her parents. She refused to expose them until she understood what she was walking into. She needed to know if the Devereux family wanted her children for the right reasons, or simply as heirs to claim. The estate looked the same when she arrived. The same long driveway, the same intimidating facade, the same feeling of not belonging. But Vivian wasn't the same woman who'd left. She walked through those doors in a suit she'd designed herself, for her own successful firm. She wasn't there to beg. She was there to negotiate. Eleanor met her in the sitting room. The older woman looked smaller somehow. Grief, maybe, or guilt. Vivian. Thank you for coming. I didn't come for thanks. I came because your lawyers made it clear I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. You could have hidden them. You chose not to. My children deserve to know their heritage. That's the only reason I'm here. Eleanor nodded slowly. They're his. We had confirmation through medical records cross-referenced during the estate settlement. I never said they weren't. Why didn't you tell him? Vivian felt 6 years of anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice steady, because he made his choice. I wasn't going to change his mind with a pregnancy. If he didn't want me, I didn't want his obligation. The silence that followed was heavy. He never remarried, Eleanor said quietly. We pressured him, introduced him to suitable women. He refused all of them. He's been lost since you left. He left me, Mrs. Devereux. Let's be clear about that. Yes. And I take responsibility for my part in it. Eleanor's hands trembled slightly as she spoke. The admission clearly cost her something. My husband and I pushed him toward an impossible choice. We thought we were protecting the family legacy. Instead, we destroyed his happiness and lost 6 years with grandchildren we didn't know existed. This wasn't what Vivian expected. She'd prepared for battle, not confession. Where is Daniel? He doesn't know you're here. He doesn't know about the children. I wanted to speak with you first. Eleanor paused. He's staying at one of our properties downtown, the hotel on 5th Avenue. I can arrange a meeting if you're willing. What happens next should be between you two. Vivian thought of her children, their questions, the empty space in their lives where a father should be. I'll meet him, but on my terms, of course. And Mrs. Devereux, if your family thinks they can use my children as convenient heirs while dismissing their mother, you're mistaken. They come with me, or they don't come at all. Eleanor met her gaze. I wouldn't expect anything less. The next morning, Vivian walked into the lobby of the Devereux Hotel. She hadn't told Daniel she was coming. She wanted to see him first, to gauge whether 6 years had changed him or simply frozen him in place. She had her answer the moment their eyes met across that marble floor. He looked destroyed, and he was staring at her children like he'd just seen a ghost. That moment in the lobby, seeing Vivian after 6 years, seeing those children with my grandmother's features, I couldn't move. My coffee shattered on the marble floor, and I just remained there, watching my past walk toward me. The little girl had pointed at me. Vivian had turned. Our eyes met, and I watched 6 years of pain cross her face before it hardened into something unreadable. She didn't come to me. She walked past, her children following, headed toward the executive offices where my mother was apparently waiting. I learned later that Eleanor had arranged everything. The meeting, the timing, the conversation with Vivian before I found out. My mother wanted to handle this before I discovered the truth. She almost succeeded. I followed them. I didn't announce myself. didn't interrupt. I just needed to understand what was happening, why Vivian was here, who those children were, even though some part of me already knew. I waited outside my mother's sitting room, my legs threatening to give out beneath me. When Vivian emerged 20 minutes later, my mother was with her. They both stopped when they saw me. Eleanor's face went pale. Vivian's expression didn't change. She'd already armored herself against whatever came next. "Daniel," my mother started. "I was going to... Tell me..." My voice came out rough. "Tell me what's happening." My mother quietly excused herself. Vivian remained perfectly still, waiting. "I have children," I finally managed. "Those are my children." "Yes, for 6 years. They've existed for 6 years, and you never told me. You didn't deserve to know." She said it without anger, just fact. "You chose your inheritance over our marriage. Why would I give you children to inherit for? I would have come back. If I'd known, that's exactly why I didn't tell you." Her voice cut through my excuses. "I didn't want you back because of what I could give you. I wanted you to fight for me because I was enough." I felt something break open in my chest. "You were always enough." I was a coward. I've regretted it every single day since. Regret doesn't raise children, Daniel. "I know." My voice cracked. "What do you want? From this? From me?" She'd clearly thought about this question long before today. "I want my children to know their father, if their father is worth knowing. I want them to have a relationship with their grandmother, if she can love them without conditions. And I want you to understand that I'm not here to reunite our family. I'm here to decide whether you've become someone who deserves to be part of theirs. How do I prove that? You don't prove it to me. You prove it to them, over time. By showing up. By being consistent. By never making them feel like they have to earn your love." I thought about Theo, Sebastian, and Colette. Names I'd just learned, faces I'd barely glimpsed. My children. Almost 6 years of their lives I'd missed because I'd been too weak to stand up to my own family. Can I meet them? Vivian studied me for a long moment. I saw her weighing everything. The man I'd been, the coward who'd let her go, whatever she saw in front of her now. "Not yet," she finally said. "First, you and I need to talk, really talk, about what happened, about what you've done to change, about what kind of father you'd actually be. I'll tell you anything. I know you will. Because if you lie to me, even once, I walk away, and I take them with me. And this time, you'll know exactly what you're losing." She held my gaze, waiting. "I understand." "Good." She gestured toward the chairs in the hotel lounge. "Then let's start from the beginning. Tell me who you've become in the last 6 years. And Daniel..." She paused, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker behind her armor. Something that might have been hope, or might have been a memory of who we used to be. "Don't waste this chance. It's the only one you're going to get." I sat down across from her, the woman I'd never stopped loving, and I started to talk. I told her everything. Not the polished version, not the story I told myself to sleep at night, the real version. The ugly one. I told her about the weeks after she left, how I'd sit in our penthouse surrounded by the spaces she'd made beautiful and feel like I was suffocating. The fabric samples were gone. Her notebooks were gone. The chaos I'd loved was replaced by silence so thick it felt like drowning. I told her about the women my parents paraded in front of me. Daughters of business partners, heiresses from old families, women who smiled at the right moments and said the right things. I couldn't even consider any of them. Every conversation felt like betrayal, even though I had no right to feel betrayed by anything. I told her about the drinking. Not enough to call it a problem, I'd convinced myself, just enough to blur the edges of the evenings, to make the silence bearable. That lasted almost a year before I realized I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. I told her about therapy. 3 different therapists before I found one who didn't let me make excuses. Dr. Reyes was a woman with sharp eyes who listened to my entire story in our first session, then gave me a look and said, "So you sacrificed the person you loved most to avoid disappointing people who put conditions on their love for you. How's that working out?" It wasn't. Obviously it wasn't. And Vivian listened to every word, her face giving away nothing. I told Vivian about the work I'd done after that, learning to recognize the patterns, how I'd been trained since childhood to prioritize legacy over everything, how I'd internalized my father's voice until I couldn't tell where his expectations ended and my own desires began. Learning to set boundaries with my mother, even when it felt like cutting off my own arm. I still see Dr. Reyes monthly. Some work never finishes. I told her about the day I finally confronted Eleanor, 2 years ago, maybe a little longer. She'd mentioned something about finding me a suitable match, and something in me snapped. I'm not marrying anyone, I'd told her. Ever. I had a wife. I loved her. You helped me destroy that, and I let you because I was too weak to choose her over your approval. That's a mistake I'll carry for the rest of my life. But I won't make it again. My mother had stared at me like she didn't recognize her own son. I didn't know you still. She'd trailed off. Loved her. I never stopped. That's the tragedy of it. I never stopped loving her for a single day. I just convinced myself that love wasn't enough. You and Dad made sure I believed that. It was the first honest conversation I'd had with my mother in 30 years. It wasn't the last. I told Vivian all of this, watching her face for some sign of what she was thinking. Her expression gave away nothing. And your father? She finally asked. Before he died, did you ever talk to him about what happened? This was harder. I took a breath. He was sick for the last 18 months. Heart problems, then complications. I visited him in the hospital near the end, and I asked him something I'd wanted to ask for years. What was that? I asked him if he thought his legacy was worth it. The company, the properties, all of it. Was it worth what our family became? Was it worth his son being miserable? Vivian leaned forward slightly. What did he say? He didn't answer at first. Then he grabbed my hand. His grip was so weak by then, and he said, I wanted you to be strong. I thought I was teaching you strength. I didn't realize I was teaching you to break the wrong things. I paused, remembering the look in his eyes. Something I'd never seen there before. Regret. He asked me if I'd ever found anyone after you. I told him no. I told him I couldn't. He just nodded and said, then maybe you're stronger than I gave you credit for. Maybe you're strong enough to know what you should have held on to. Vivienne was quiet for a long moment. That's not an apology, she finally said. Not to me. No, he never apologized. He wasn't capable of it, not directly, but it was the closest thing I ever got to him admitting he was wrong. She observed my face like she was looking for cracks, places where the words might not match what was underneath. You've changed, she said. It wasn't quite a question. I've tried to. I don't know if it's enough. Neither do I. The honesty of it hit me harder than anger would have. She wasn't punishing me. She was just being careful. She had 3 children to protect, and I was still, in many ways, a stranger to her now. What happens next? I asked. Vivian rose from her chair, walked to the window overlooking the street below. I'm staying in the city for 2 weeks. My parents have the children. They're safe. They're happy. They don't know why Mommy had to take a trip. 2 weeks. That's how long you have to convince me. She turned to face me. Not with grand gestures. Not with money or lawyers or promises. I need to see who you are now, in ordinary moments. How you treat people when you're frustrated. How you handle it when things don't go your way. Whether you've actually learned to put someone else's needs before your own comfort. How do I show you that? You figure it out. That's part of the test. She gathered her bag, preparing to leave, and I felt panic rising in my chest. Vivian, she stopped at the door. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know that. But I need you to understand something. I crossed the room, stopping just short of reaching for her. Those 6 years you were building your business, raising our children, becoming this incredible person, I was frozen. I couldn't move forward because part of me knew. I'd left everything that mattered behind, meeting someone else, starting a new family. It would have meant accepting that what we had was truly over. I couldn't do it. Her eyes searched mine. That's not loyalty, Daniel. That's guilt. Maybe it started that way. But somewhere along the line, it became something else. It became clarity. I know exactly what I want now. I want the chance to be the man I should have been 6 years ago. Vivian's hand rested on the doorframe. For a moment, I saw something flicker in her expression. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the memory of why she'd loved me once. 2 weeks, she repeated. Don't waste them. She walked out, and I remained there alone in that hotel lounge, surrounded by strangers and the weight of my own failure, and I made myself a promise. I would not fail this time. Whatever it took, however long it took, I would prove to Vivian that people could change, that I had changed. And maybe, just maybe, I would get the chance to meet my children. The next morning, I woke up earlier than I had in years. I had 2 weeks to show Vivian who I'd become, and I had no idea where to start. I started with something small. No grand gestures, no elaborate plans. I remembered what she'd said about ordinary moments. So I texted her that first morning and asked if she'd have coffee with me. Not at some expensive restaurant, not at a Devereux property, just a cafe near her hotel, the kind of place where nobody would recognize my name. She agreed. One word, fine. I arrived 20 minutes early. Old habit. My father always said being late was a sign of disrespect. But when Vivian walked in exactly on time, I realized I'd spent those 20 minutes rehearsing what to say, and every word evaporated the moment I saw her. She ordered her coffee quickly, efficiently, the way she did everything now. I noticed she barely glanced at the menu, already knowing what she wanted before she walked in. That was new, or maybe I'd just never paid attention before. We talked for 2 hours that first morning. Not about us, not about the children, about her work. I asked questions and actually listened to the answers. She told me about projects she was proud of, clients who had become friends, the moment she'd realized her firm was going to survive. There was this hotel in the Arts District, she said. 3rd year in business. The owner gave me complete creative control, and I was terrified. What if I failed? What if everything I'd built came crashing down? What happened? I didn't sleep for 3 weeks. I second-guessed every decision. And then the project was finished, and a design magazine called it one of the most innovative hotel interiors in the country. A small smile crossed her face. That's when I knew I could do this. Not because someone believed in me, because I'd proven it to myself. I understood what she wasn't saying. She'd built that confidence alone, without me, in spite of me. I'm proud of you, I said. I know that doesn't mean much coming from me, but it doesn't mean nothing. She met my gaze over her coffee cup. It just means less than it would have 6 years ago. Fair enough. The next day, I invited her to see one of my own projects. Not a Devereux property, something I'd developed independently. A small, affordable housing complex on the east side. It wasn't glamorous. It wouldn't make the family fortune any larger. But it was mine. This isn't what I expected, Vivian said, as we walked through the courtyard. What did you expect? Luxury condos, another tower with your family's name on it. I've built plenty of those. They don't mean anything to me anymore. I gestured toward the playground where children were laughing, the community garden where residents grew vegetables. This means something. These families have a safe place to live because I chose to build it instead of another monument to the Devereux legacy. She was quiet for a long moment, watching a mother push her daughter on a swing. When did you start doing this? 3 years ago. After I realized that everything I'd been building was just empty. My father wanted the empire to grow, but growth for its own sake. What's the point? These families needed housing they could afford, so I built it. Your father approved. He hated it, called it a waste of resources. I shrugged. I did it anyway. Something shifted in Vivian's expression. Not quite warmth, but perhaps a crack in the wall she'd built. We spent the following days like that. Coffee in the mornings, long walks where we talked about everything except the thing that mattered most. I showed her who I'd become. She showed me glimpses of the woman she'd grown into. On day 5, we hit our first real test. We were having lunch when a business associate spotted me. Gerald Hastings. Old money, old attitudes. Exactly the kind of man my father used to invite to dinner parties. Daniel. Haven't seen you in months." He clapped my shoulder, then noticed Vivian. His expression flickered with recognition. "And who is this lovely lady? Wait, aren't you the one who— well, I heard you'd moved on from all that unpleasantness." "Vivienne Moreau," she said coolly, "owner of Moreau Design. We've actually never met, Mr. Hastings, but I redesigned the lobby of your downtown office building. Your company paid my firm quite well for it." Gerald's face reddened. I could have smoothed things over, made a joke, changed the subject, preserved the social peace the way I'd been trained to do. The old Daniel would have. "Gerald," I said instead, my voice calm but firm, "Vivian is an incredibly successful businesswoman who built her company from nothing. She's also the most important person in my life. If you can't speak to her with respect, we have nothing to discuss." Gerald blinked, muttered something about having another appointment, and left. Vivian stared at me. "That's going to cost you," she said. "He's connected to half your business partners. I don't care. The old you would have cared. The old me was a coward who let his family dictate his choices. I'm not that person anymore." She didn't smile, but something in her eyes softened, just slightly. Sometimes the biggest proof of change isn't in the grand declarations. It's in the small moments when no one's watching, or when someone is watching and you choose integrity anyway. Daniel is learning that lesson in real time, and I think Vivian is starting to see it too. Day 8 was when things got harder. My mother invited us both to dinner at the estate. Vivian didn't want to go. I could see it in the tension around her eyes, but she agreed. "If I'm going to let my children know this family," she said, "I need to understand what I'm walking them into." The dinner was awkward in ways I'd expected, and ways I hadn't. My mother tried too hard. She complimented Vivian's dress, her career, her strength. Every word sounded rehearsed, and I could see Vivian growing more guarded with each passing minute. Halfway through the main course, my mother made a mistake. "I hope you'll consider letting the children spend summers here," Eleanor said. "The estate has so much to offer. The grounds, the staff, the opportunities for education." Vivian set down her fork. "My children have never wanted for anything, Mrs. Devereux. I made sure of that. Of course, I didn't mean to imply. They have a home. They have grandparents who've been there since day one. They have stability and love and a mother who would walk through fire for them." Vivian's voice stayed calm, but I could hear the steel underneath. "If they ever come here, it will be because they want to, not because this family decides they need to be trained into some role they didn't ask for." My mother opened her mouth to respond. "She's right," I said. Both women turned toward me. "Mother, I love you, but Vivian is their parent. She's been their only parent for almost 6 years. Whatever relationship we build with Theo and Sebastian and Colette, it's on her terms, not ours." Eleanor looked like she wanted to argue, but something in my expression must have stopped her. "You're right," she finally said. "I apologize, Vivian. Old habits are difficult to break." Vivian observed her for a long moment. "I believe you're trying, Mrs. Devereux. That matters, but trying isn't the same as succeeding. I'll be watching to see which one you choose." The rest of dinner was quieter. When we left, Vivian walked beside me in silence until we reached her car. "You stood up to her," she said, "even when it meant taking my side against your own mother. It wasn't about sides, it was about what's right." She searched my face in the darkness. "2 more days," she said, "and then I go home to my children and decide whether you get to meet them." She drove away, and I remained there watching her taillights disappear, wondering if 10 days had been enough to undo 6 years of damage. Day 9, I woke up to a text from Vivian at 6 in the morning. Something came up with a client. Need to handle it. Rain check? The old me would have been relieved. More time to prepare, less pressure to perform. The new me understood what this actually was, a test I hadn't seen coming. I texted back, "Can I help?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "You don't know anything about interior design." "No, but I know about difficult clients, and I'm good at carrying things." Another long pause. "Warehouse on 5th Street. Be there in an hour." I arrived in 45 minutes. The warehouse was one of Vivian's ongoing projects. A restaurant renovation that should have been finished weeks ago. She was holding her phone when I walked in, her other hand pressed against her forehead. "This is a disaster," she said when she saw me. "Not a greeting, just fact. What do you need?" She hesitated, like she was deciding whether to trust me or tell me to leave. "I need the tile supplier to admit they sent the wrong order and expedite the correct one. I need the contractor to stay long enough to install it when it arrives. And I need the client to believe this isn't falling apart when she shows up this afternoon at 2. Which one do you want me to handle?" "You think you can handle any of them?" "I think I can try." After a moment, she assigned me the supplier. Smart, that was the problem money could solve, and I had money. But when I called, the supplier was adamant the tile we ordered wasn't in stock, wouldn't be for 2 weeks, not their problem. I could have thrown money at it, could have name-dropped the Devereux name, made threats, pulled strings. Instead, I put myself on hold and walked over to where Vivian was negotiating with the contractor. What tile would work as a substitute? I asked her. Something they'd have in stock right now. She pulled up her design on her tablet, examined it, made a face. The Portuguese ceramic in sand wash would work, maybe even better than what I originally chose. But it's more expensive and the client already approved the budget. What if the client didn't have to pay the difference? Daniel, what if someone else covered it? As an investment in your firm. No strings, no expectation of payback. Just someone who believes in what you're building. She stared at me. "I don't need your money. I know you don't. But do you need this project to succeed?" The contractor was packing up his tools. The clock was ticking. Vivian's jaw tightened. "Fine, but we're signing a contract. This is a business investment, not charity. Whatever you want." I got back on the phone with the supplier. The Portuguese tile was in stock. They could have it delivered in 4 hours, by noon. I gave them my credit card, confirmed the address, and hung up. The contractor agreed to stay. Vivian spent the next several hours transforming chaos into something that resembled a plan. I did what she asked, moved samples, held things while she made decisions, stayed out of her way when she needed space to think. When the client arrived at 2, Vivian walked her through the changes with such confidence you'd never know the morning had been a disaster. The client loved the new tile choice, loved the progress, left happy. After she was gone, Vivian sat down on a stack of tile boxes and let out a long breath. "Thank you," she said. "You would have figured it out without me. Maybe. But it would have been harder." She gazed up at me. "You didn't try to take over. You didn't throw money at it and expect that to fix everything. You asked what I needed and then you actually listened. That's what partners do." The word hung between us. Partners. Like we could be that again. Like maybe we'd never stopped being that. Underneath everything else. "One more day," she said quietly. "I know. Tomorrow I go home, and I decide whether my children meet their father." My chest tightened. What can I do? "To show you I'm ready." She rose from the tile boxes, brushed dust off her pants, met my eyes with a directness that had always undone me. "Nothing. You've done enough. Now I just need to think." She left me there in that half-finished restaurant, surrounded by tile and tools and the smell of fresh paint, and I drove back to my penthouse wondering if I'd done enough to earn what I wanted most. Day 10 arrived. Our last day. I texted Vivian that morning, no agenda. "Whatever you want to do." She chose something I didn't expect. "Take me where you go when you need to think." I took her to a cemetery. "This is where you think?" she asked as we walked through the gates. "My grandmother's buried here. She's the only person in my family who ever told me it was okay to disappoint people if it meant being true to yourself." I led her to a simple headstone. "I come here when I need to remember who I wanted to be before I learned to be who everyone expected." Vivian stopped beside me in silence. "What would she think?" she finally asked. "About what you did to us." She'd be ashamed of me. She told me once that the hardest thing in life is standing alone when everyone you love is pulling you in the wrong direction. I failed that test. And now? Now I'm trying to pass it. Even if I'm 6 years too late. We walked through the cemetery for an hour, past old stones and new ones, past families visiting their dead, past reminders that life was shorter than we wanted to believe. I'm scared, I admitted, of meeting them, of not being enough, of seeing my whole life in their faces and knowing I missed almost 6 years of it. You should be scared. Being a parent is terrifying. How do you do it? Make every decision matter, carry all that responsibility? She stopped walking. You do it because you don't have a choice. Because 3 people depend on you to show up every single day, even when you're exhausted, even when you don't have answers. You do it because love isn't a feeling. It's a commitment you make every morning when you wake up. I turned to face her. This woman who'd raised 3 children alone while building a business, who'd survived my betrayal and somehow hadn't let it make her bitter. I want that chance, I said, to make that commitment, to show up for them the way you have. I know you do. The question is whether wanting it is enough. We left the cemetery as the sun was setting. Vivian's flight was the next morning. This was it, our last conversation before she went home to decide my future. I can't promise I'll be perfect, I said when we reached her car. I can't promise I won't make mistakes, but I can promise that I'll never put anything before them again. Not my family's expectations, not the business, not my own comfort. If you give me this chance, I won't waste it. Vivian's hand rested on her car door. She didn't open it. Daniel, I need you to understand something. This isn't about whether you've changed. I believe you have. I saw it this week, in how you talked to that man at lunch, how you stood up to your mother, how you helped me today without trying to control everything. Then what is it about? It's about whether I can trust you with the most important thing in my life, whether I can look at my children's faces when they ask about their father and tell them the truth, that he's worth knowing, that he won't disappoint them the way he disappointed me. My throat tightened. How do I prove that? You can't. Not yet. That's what scares me. Her eyes met mine. But I think you deserve the chance to try. I couldn't breathe. Does that mean? It means I'm going home tomorrow. I'm going to talk to my parents, and then I'm going to sit down with 3 5-year-olds and explain to them that their father wants to meet them. And if they say yes, if they're ready, then you'll get your chance. And you? Are you ready? She smiled, but it was sad. I don't know if I'll ever be ready to watch you walk into their lives, but they deserve a father, and you deserve the chance to be one. So we're going to try this, slowly, carefully, with a lot of boundaries and a lot of conversations. And if you mess this up, I won't. If you mess this up, she continued, you don't get another chance. Not with them. They're children, Daniel. They'll believe you when you say you love them. They'll trust you. If you break that trust, it'll damage them in ways I can't fix. So I need you to be absolutely certain before you step into this. I thought about everything I'd lost, everything I'd spent 6 years trying to forget, everything I'd finally admitted I wanted more than my next breath. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Vivian nodded slowly. She reached out, the first time she'd touched me in 6 years, and her hand rested briefly on my arm. Then I'll call you when we're ready. She got in her car. I watched her drive away one more time, but this time felt different. This time, she was taking a piece of my heart with her, and maybe, just maybe, she'd bring it back.